to infinity and beyond.
Hello Internet, I'm Guy. In my last two videos I created this interesting tensegrity structure. I really enjoyed the process of making it and I was blown away by how solid it is, and so now I'm using it as a plant stand for one of my orchids, as you can see here. Then I got really interested in tensegrity and I discovered this skylon that was produced for the Festival of Britain in 1951. It was 300 feet tall and 50 feet from the ground. It was a huge steel structure supported entirely by tensegrity cables. So this inspired me, and I happened to notice and dug out of my files this cartoon that I did as a kid. It was a pen and ink drawing, and I just thought, well, okay, I could make some kind of wooden rocket ship with lights in it supported by tensegrity cables. So that's what I'm going to do today. It's going to be a fun project, so stay with me. I hope you enjoy it.
So here's most of the materials I'll be using to make this project. This is a chunk of cherry wood, I believe. This will be the rocket. This is some 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood, the stainless steel tensioning cable, and the ferrules I'll need to secure it, and of course the crimping tool. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is square this stalk up into a piece that's 2.5 inches square. So now I'm just going to knock off the corners here to make it octagonal, just easier to put on the lathe that way. Alright, so I've got this mounted on the lathe. I'm just going to start by getting it cylindrical, and then I'll start making the shape. I'm thinking this is going to be the bottom here, and eventually I will drill out into here to open up a hole up in the middle there to run the lighting into. We'll get to that later. Well, this is annoying. I've got a little worm track right in here that seems to go in not too far. I guess I'm just going to thin this out a little bit more, just take some more off here. I've got the basic shape worked out here though, so this is going to work out. Well, this is annoying. Here's another worm track. I got rid of the one that was over here by turning it down, but now I've got more worm debris in here to go through. So I got my starting drill in there, and now I'm going to go in with a 3/8 and then open that up and get something drilled out all the way up into here. One more pass with 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to open up this whole area for the flamey end where I'm going to have LEDs shining down to create that pool of light in the bottom. Jumping from 1/2 inch to a 1 inch Forstner bit. Let's see how this goes. All right, going for a 1 1/4 inch, and I think that's going to be sufficient. Okay, I've got my live center in the hole here, so that's gripped very nicely, and I'm going to try and get a bit further up towards the point here, and I think I'm going to have to finish that by hand. Let's see what happens here. Alright, that's getting there. All I need to do is sand this in and maybe finish that out a bit more, and we've got a rocket. I'm going to reverse the lathe so it's easier to sand this in and smooth it out. Well, that looks a lot like my rendering. In fact, I think it looks better than my rendering, which was just a rough sketch anyway. So now I'm going to take some tung oil finish and coat that. Oh yeah. Beautiful. So now I've got some finish on there. I want to look at how big of a circle here makes sense to balance harmonically and visually with the sketch. And I'm just going to go by eye and picture it right about there, maybe a bit bigger. Yeah, right about there. So I'm going to measure off to that approximate center and draw a circle and cut this out and spin it up on the lathe to tidy that up and make a clean circle. Okay, it looks like it's going to be a 10-inch circle, so I'm going to just draw that out. Cut that out on the bandsaw, and then I'll go over to the lathe. All right, let's spin this up and even it out a little bit. Okay, so I've got a rough finish on this surface, and I'm hoping to be able to sand it down and make it feel nice and sand the whole surface. So I'm going to use my little rotary sanding tool here, see how this works out. Oh yeah, that's going to come out really nice. Okay, so I'm going to apply some tung oil finish. Oh, plenty on there. Just spin it up really, really slowly here. Let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, I think I got that with a good first coat. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. I just wanted to break in and remind you that I could really use your support. So please remember to give me a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can learn about other upcoming videos, and you could support me on Patreon through the link below. Thanks for watching. According to my sketch here, I have two different sets of guy wires. There are the tall ones that are pulling the rocket down, and then the other ones that are going up against these support rods, and then over here, which is pulling the rocket up. And so these two forces balance each other. This is intended to illustrate LEDs that we buried up inside of here, shining down to indicate flamey end down and pointy end up, right? So what I need to do is figure out how to drill these holes and these holes accurately. The reason that I need to have these all accurate and separated is one of these wires will be carrying power in to the LEDs at the top, and the other one, or one of these, will be bringing power in at the bottom. And so there'll be a little wire up to a little circuit board in here that will power the LEDs. So what I've done, I've drawn it out as a circle here with triangles representing one set of wires and circles representing the others. I put my rocket in here, and I've traced off a height at the height of a pencil here to mark the holes at the bottom. And then I've used my 1, 2, 3 block to mark holes at the top, actually parallel to this line like this. And I've got the height established with a measurement so I know how deep I can go.
So now I just need to drill all these holes so I can feed cables into here. So there's no good way to jig this up, so I'm just going to have to hand hold it. I've got it locked up on a piece of 1/2-inch MDF, and I'm just going to eyeball each hole. Well, that looks pretty good. Back to my paper template, I've drawn a larger circle that will be the location for the 6 outer cable holes that will feed up through the base. And then there will also be 3 holes that will be for the support posts. So I'm just going to mark all of those now accurately so that I know where to put holes for the 6 cables. And then the ones marked with a circle will be where essentially the dowel rods will go. Back to the drill press, I'm going to drill the 6 outer holes for the cables. So looking up under the table of my drill press, I have this giant nut that I can loosen to tilt the table, but I've got it so nicely trammed in that I don't want to adjust it. But this would be the ideal way to get those rods in at an angle there, the support rods for the base, for the cables. And I'm going to come up with plan B because I really don't want to mess with that. Having decided to set a 20-degree angle for these support posts, I've set up a jig here to get me approximately 20.2 degrees. I can deal with that. And so then I'm going to drop this in here like that. Get this dropped into my spot there, and then put a clamp right on there. Okay, that is secure. Double check that everything's tightened down. And I'm going to go all the way through here, I believe, and then there will be additional wood down below here to hide all of the tensioning blocks. Okay, so the rocket will sit right in the center there, and these 3/8-inch dowels will plug right in there and glue in, and then I'll decide where to cut them so the cable comes up and loops over. It comes up and over and down to here. So the rocket will actually be up here, and the cable will go like that eventually. I lost live audio for this section, so I'm doing a voiceover. But here I'm cutting out a ring here that will hold little bolts that will form the tensioning system that will tension the cable from here over to the hole. So there'll be a little block right where I'm pointing, and that's where the cable will go through the hole and out through the top. This is all upside down, of course. So I'm going to cut out this little ring, and then I can put the bolts through it like that, and those will then pull in the tensioning blocks that will pull in on the cables. So now the cables are going to have to make an angle curl around that hole, and so I'm going to use my Dremel tool here to just soften the flow of where the cable will guide around from the vertical axis down there and pull over to the tensioning block. So this is just going to sweeten that curl a little bit. Now I've got this clamped up onto the milling machine, and it's dropped into the vise here. And I've got it trued up to the drill there, so you can see I've got my reference lines lined up to the square. And I'm going to drill through the 6 holes here for the tensioning bolts. This is a clearance for a number 6 bolt, as I showed you earlier. So now I've got all those bolts sighted in there, and that's going to work just great. And now I just need to glue this down and secure it to the bottom of the base. So the cables, as you can see, will pull over to the holes.
And I've got a reference circle there to show me where to center this, so when I do put it down on there, it will glue into a concentric location. So set it down there, line up the bolts with all the lines, and then I'm going to bring in my brad nailer, and ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. Yeah, I don't have live audio, so I have to do that. And back to your regularly scheduled audio. So now at the top of each of the guide rods here, what I want to do is put a brass pin right through the center and then cut a slit with a slitting saw all the way through here so that the cable can guide around this rod. So first thing I have to do is get the whole thing centered up here. So I'm going to use my center finder, the electronic one by Fowler. There we are, I'm right on that edge. So come up and go across and find the other side. Come down and sneak up on that edge. There it is. So now I can set my 0 based on that. Okay, right on 0. So I'm going to lock that position off. Okay, first hole. Take that one out and put the next one in right up to the stop position there. This only needs to be hand tight because there's no real force on it. So this is one of a set of cutters that I got from Harbor Freight with a little mandrel, different tooth counts, different diameters. This one seems to be perfect for cutting wood. It's a cheap set, maybe 12 bucks or something like that. So this will work just fine for cutting right through there to create a slot. The width of this is about 35 thousandths, and the cable that I'm going to be using is about 40 thousandths. So I might test the cable to see if it'll fit. If it doesn't, I'll just drop it down here and make a second pass. So here we go. Interesting to be doing woodworking on a milling machine. So the acid test is, does the cable fit in the slot? And yes, it does. So that's perfect. So as they say in all the cooking shows, off camera, I have put the brass rod in there and glued it in. And I've also cut these to a bevel here so that when they go in, they'll be flat at the bottom there. And I put some blue tape on the bottom so the glue won't squeeze out all over the place. So let's put some glue on here. I'm going to put a liberal amount on there. And shoot that into the right angle very carefully. Gotta get it lined up just right so it's in the right alignment there, and then I can take out the extra glue and rinse and repeat for the other two. I cut out this little piece of perf board so that I can then put it in here into the rocket, and that will then hold some orange LEDs that will shine light down onto here to create this illusion of the rocket putting a plume out of the bottom here. There we go. So now I've just got to wire some LEDs into this. I dug through my collection and found just one orange LED that will be perfect. Let me just hook it up here, you can see it. So yeah, if I mount that up inside the rocket, right about that height, that'll make a nice pool of orange light at the bottom, as if it was trying to put out flames at the bottom. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. I just wanted to break in and remind you that I could really use your support. So please remember to give me a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can learn about other upcoming videos, and you could support me on Patreon through the link below. Thanks for watching. In order to make the little tensioning blocks, I've got some 3/8 inch aluminum plate here. I'm going to cut a little strip 6 inches long to get some 1/2 inch by 1 inch approximately blocks that I can use for that. So here we go. Okay, I'm going to mark off 6 1-inch lengths here, so I'm going to blue this up first. And fortunately I have a 1-inch grid here, so I can just mark off each 1-inch section roughly. These dimensions are not at all important, so 1 inch right about there. Oh yes, I should have let that dry a little bit first. So this is where these blocks will sit, and obviously the screw will be able to tension the line like this. So I'm going to drill a hole here for 632 tap in there, and then a hole across this way so that the cable can come through and loop around and cinch over, and then pull on the cable this way. And cut these to length. Well, it looks like I cut those a little rough, so it's not strictly necessary since it isn't important, but I'm just going to go ahead and mill them all flush first. Okay, I've got to do a center finding here just to get the center line of all of these holes, and then I'm just going to bang through all of the holes. So, starting off by finding edges here, right there, so reset the DRO, and finding the edge for reference for all the other holes I'm going to make. There we are. And tapping for 632 threads. So now I need to drill a bunch of holes through the side that the cable will loop through so that I can tension it. So what I've done is I've cut a piece of MDF just a little bit thinner because I can't fit parallels in here. I'm going to drop this down and then use my magnetic parallel holder as a stop here. So that will be my guide stop. And then I'll put another block right there, and then I can just clamp those down evenly here, matching the tension, and drill these holes straight through into the MDF. Okay, so now I just need to center this way, and then I'm going to drill a hole and then chamfer it so that the hole will have a nice bevel for the cable to dress around. And getting it all centered up. Drilling a 5/32 hole first, and then since I have the keyless chuck, I'm just going to swap out the parts and bevel on this side, and then I'll flip them all over and do the bevel on the other side later. Put the chamfering bit in, and that looks good. So what I need to do now is take these cables that I've pre-cut from a whole spool of it here and feed them in, and then get some ferrules crimped onto them so that they will be held inside of here. So I'm going to go in with my hemostats here and see if I can get that wire. Okay, got it. So now I can crimp on a ferrule there to hold that in place when it goes back inside. So put that on there, shoot it in here, and a good solid crimp. So now that will pull up in there and set right in there. Rinse and repeat. So I've got these 3 wires in. Now I'm going to put these ones in, but what I need to do is also trap some of the wire for the LED into one of these so I can feed power up through the wire and into the LED to light the rocket exhaust there. So I'm going to feed this through right here, pull it around, and then tuck this wire in as well. See how that works out. Okay, so now when I push the circuit board up inside of there, I've got wire feeding into it, to the LED here. Okay, so I've got all the 6 wires in, and I managed to capture the electric wires for the LED, and as you can see, it's right in there, shining the flamey end down. So now I've got to figure out how to tension it all. I built this clever jig to hold everything, so the bottom is held in a hole in the bottom there, and then there's a bit of a recess in this 2x4 that's clamped to the base. This gives me a lot of structural rigidity and controls the location of the rocket in that space. So now I'm pulling a wire through from what would be the top, but is below us now, put the ferrule on there, run it through the tensioning block, and then shoot it back through the ferrule, so I have a loop around the tensioning block. Get that nice and snug, pull it up tight, and then I'll get in there and crimp that down firmly. And the crimping tool comes with a cutting tool, so I can just nip that off. But this is looking very good right now. It's got some room to tension, maybe a 1/4 inch or so, and I can just snip that off. So that's one of several. Now I've got them all done. All right, so now I'm going to take the clamps off and get the whole system out of my jig very carefully. It looks like the cables are holding it together pretty well now. Now the only trick is, how the heck do I get that 2x4 out of there? Oh, I can remove those 2 screws. You see, I've got those centering the rocket in that 2x4. So, be back in a moment. What's really cool about Tensegrity is these 6 cables here are holding this perfectly in place. It never ceases to amaze me how this works. And of course all these tensioning cables are just right now. I've got it all dialed in. Okay, that's it. It may not be perfectly level, but I have been tensioning all of these cables a little bit, so I'm going to tension this one just a little bit more. It's a little bit loose. But then I can also hook up the power now, just as a test, and see the light at the bottom here. So isn't that lovely? A little flamey bottom. So the final thing is to hook up a power jack to these wires at the bottom here. I've got it marked minus and plus, and bring out a little power jack here so I can just plug it into the wall with a wall adapter. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I tend to try and release a video every week. I've missed a week or two because I had a head cold recently, but stay tuned because I am always doing something weird and interesting. You never know what it'll be. In fact, I don't know what I'm going to do next week, but it'll be fun. See you soon.